Hello, everybody. This is Jessica K and Robin Wilt, and we are here with In the Flow podcast. Thank you for joining us today. So, Robin, tell us, what are we going to talk about?
Oh, my friend Chiron. Yeah, Chiron. I didn't know anything about Chiron maybe until like the past decade. But Chiron it's a really important point that we get to look at in our astrology and understand and utilize, right? It's a tool that we can utilize in our healing and our growth and our understanding of who we are and why we're here and just, all the things that we're doing in life and, that we get to advance and to be on our journey.
Yeah, so the reason that Chiron is so important right now is we have Chiron and Mercury and the North Node conjunct in Aries. And we are also moving into the eclipse window right now, the Libra full moon eclipse. So you probably will not listen to this during the eclipse will probably already have passed, but you will still be in the eclipse window because the solar eclipse happens on April 8th. And that is with the sun in Aries. We're having the Libra moon right now. So what you can look back on and see how this has affected all of these things. How has it affected your Chiron? How has it, allowed the release of emotions? And how has it affected your ability to speak your truth with that Mercury? And all of this is pushing, Aries energy is pushing towards healing our wounded healer in a very participatory way. So it's like we're not looking to somebody else to heal us, but we're actually participating in our own healing and healing any woundings we have around our communication, how we express ourselves with others. So there's so much energy around this because it's also where our purpose, our North Node is right now. Like this is where we're moving into being in a healed state where we can truly express ourselves in a way that heals others. So a lot of energy around it, also finding that balance, letting go of those emotions that no longer serve us so that we can move forward into our purpose. So a very dynamic time, and still important to work on Chiron, whether we're in this window or not. So Chiron is always going to be important for us to continue working on, as we know that journey is like a spiral. So it's going to keep coming around and reminding us and providing us opportunities to shift in these areas of our wounding.
Yeah. And the other important thing to remember is that eclipses especially are their activation points. So, right, what Jessica was saying, it's not like we have just this one day of, healing or understanding and then we're done with it. It's like it activates something within us. It activates something by transit and then also in our own personal birth chart. So understanding where these points are in the sky and what's happening, but then also taking that deeper look and looking at your chart and seeing how these energies are affecting you personally can be really key, because it does, right? It activates something. It makes you aware of something. You are bringing a new, right? Because Mercury is also how we think. It's also how, how our thought processes are. And I've realized this so much the past couple of weeks, if your thoughts are coming from wounding, right, your perception is completely skewed. Like you're not thinking in a way that's in alignment with divine mind, that's in alignment with spirit, because you have this skewed trauma-based healing or thinking that's going on. So it's all connected together for sure.
Yeah, well, and that's really important too when we talk about sovereignty. So are we responding out of a place of alignment and embodiment, or are we responding based on traumas and being triggered? And when I realized that my sovereignty was connected to my traumas, it blew my mind. I was like, well, of course it is, but I've never connected that. But if we are on autopilot, just hopping from one trigger to the next and just responding, reacting, not even responding, but reacting to everything that's happening to us, we are not living our fullest life. It's going to be harder for us to be in alignment because we're not even checking in with the divine at that point. We are just in this very triggered and traumatized state. And I will say there's no judgment around that. I've lived most of my life that way. And, the biggest healing point for me was when I realized, oh, I'm actually in a trauma spiral. And this has been going on for days. So the last couple days have seemed crazy and I'm out of it, but it's because I'm not actually aware of what's happening. I'm just reacting. I'm just being buffeted about by the traumas and by the flashbacks or whatever we're experiencing. We're not even, like you said, that perception. We're not experiencing this reality. We are experiencing the past. And that's why it's so important to be in the present moment and to be in alignment, because then we can actually respond from the present moment in our alignment. And that's where sovereignty comes from. So that's why it's so important that we look at this Chiron. Where is it in our chart? You know, what house, what sign, where is it in our chart, and what is it activating for us? And then also understanding when we look at the collective, collectively, we've got North Node, Chiron, Mercury, and Aries. So everybody else, you know, if you think we who are trying to ascend and be enlightened and be in alignment are being triggered and buffeted about, imagine what the world is experiencing. And for me, when I realized how much of an effect that had on me personally, it opened my heart in compassion, because I was like, if I'm experiencing this, so is everybody else. And it explains why. You know, you may come in with a good mood and somebody lashes out. They've probably been triggered, and who knows how long. Who knows when the last time they actually saw the present moment. So just that grounding into the present moment throughout the day really helps us with our sovereignty and being able to move from that place. And it's so important.
Yeah, the other thing that's coming to mind is you're sharing, I believe this, right? And at any point, if Jessica or I ever say anything and you don't agree with it, just you can throw it out, right? Like you don't have to take everything that we say as the gospel truth. But um, I believe that Chiron wants to be healed in us, right? Whatever that wound is, however it plays out, we are continually being moved towards healing and being whole and coming from that place of connection with spirit or the divine. So it's going to be triggered, it's going to be happening, but what you can do is like you can have an understanding of it and you can actually help yourself to gain that awareness, right? I had a old coach who his coach told him that awareness leads to choice, which leads to change, right? You can't really change a habit until you're aware of it. So understanding it, I mean, when I first started really researching my Chiron and learning, because it was being triggered by Uranus, which, right, Uranus comes in and just wants to like have its way with things. It really helped me to understand my patterns, and I'm still learning about it because there's still this activation that's happening for me around my Chiron, and what that plays out in my life and relationships and right every my financial world, my business, like it plays out in every area of your life because we're not singular beings, right? This wound that we have, even though it might be in this area of relationships or money, it's actually affecting our entire life. So gaining that awareness and gaining that clarity is only going to help you in life and help you to understand why you're being triggered by, you know, these things that seem like they're really weird and seem like they're really inconsequential, but there's actually like this core wound that is being triggered that the universe wants you to look at. The universe wants you to heal it. The universe wants you to kind of go back to that wound, and I call it rewiring. I don't know if that's like a technical term, but that's always kind of what I think of it as. It's like we're going back to that short circuit and like from a safe place, allowing yourself to feel the emotions that you couldn't feel, right? To have that healing around it so you can rewire it and you can understand it moving forward. Yeah. So what the other thing that's kind of like Jessica and I were chatting beforehand, and the word that keeps kind of popping out to me, we were taking some notes and discussing what we wanted to talk about, but like Chiron and its effects. So do we want to share some personal things and just so people can kind of get an example of like how, you know, how Chiron can play out or
Yeah, okay. Let's get personal. I like it. So I will say it reminds me of some of the videos I've done and the realizations I've had in the last couple of months. And the biggest thing that came up for me was like intrusive thoughts are an opportunity to heal. So it's like
Mhm.
you're going to keep thinking this, or these things are going to keep popping up in your awareness because they want to be healed, not because they want to annoy you or they're poking your tender spot. And do I understand this all the time? No. but I'm more and more understanding and being open and inviting. So it's all about like having the open heart to allow these things to come in and be healed and saying, oh, wow, like there is a piece of me that is wounded around this. And that's why I keep remembering that memory. And, my heart wants to close and push it away. But if I can say, okay, this is triggering me, let me nurture myself, let me open my heart. And can I invite, like, can I see the piece of me, like maybe it's a 5-year-old or 10-year-old, whatever. Can I see that piece of me going through that situation? Because it's not me right now. And then bringing that piece of me back and saying, I understand and let's heal this, and just sharing that love. So, like, approaching these triggers with an open heart, which requires lots of self care and nurturing. When we do that, we can transform it like that. And like for me, the funny thing is, it's like, okay, you did this one. Like, oh, okay, you're up for healing today. Here's another, and here's another, and here's another. But it's like, okay, I'm in the space to handle some of this. And that's where I say, guides, thank you. Angels, help me. And okay, I'm good. I can't do any more. Like, I'm good. But for me, my Chiron is in the eighth house, in the sixth house, and the sixth house is really around relating to others. So one of service to others and how we heal ourselves. So for me, it has been a lifelong journey. I was parentified at an early age, which like is one of the key hallmarks of that. So I always felt like it was my responsibility to take care of other people. I always put other people before myself. And then it was like when everything was calm, then I could breathe and relax. But as we all know with life, those calm periods, especially the older I get, like there are calm periods, but there's also just periods of kind of consistent turmoil. So my bar is real high, like I can deal with a lot, but it's been a huge shifting point the last several years where I really focused on embodiment. So getting in the body, and then I realized like everything in the body triggers me. Everything in the body, is hard. So grounding is good, but the body aches and pains. So then it's like, okay, the Chiron thing, like where there's pain, there's an opportunity to heal. So it's like, okay, let's heal the body. And that was a big deal for me. With that in the sixth house is, I would go to practitioners and they're like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you, or it's this weird thing. So it was very hard to be understood, which is part of that wounding. But I stood in my truth and said, I am going to heal this body. So whatever I need to do, whatever practitioners I need to see, I was just kind of relentless in following through with that. And I can say that that has really shifted a lot for me. And when we think about, Chiron is around where are we vulnerable? What do we fear? And where do we feel safe? So I was vulnerable in the body and I feared it, but it's also around worthiness. So I know the more I felt strongly about my body and asked for help and healed it, then that worthiness, like, yes, I am worth fighting for and advocating for. And then this whole me and other people, like I was so used to nurturing and nourishing other people that the universe presented me with like, endless vacuums that were like, okay, we will suck it all out of you all the time. And then I became resentful. So it was just like this pattern that kept showing up. And it's like, why is this happening to me? But I realized when I started putting myself first, when I started nurturing myself the most and said, you know what, I am the most important thing in my life. So I cannot give out of an empty cup. And then it's been real interesting because when you're surrounded by people and they're used to taking from you all the time, and all of a sudden you start putting the brakes on it. And as I leaned into it, it's hard. But as I leaned into it more and more, like I will say no. I will definitely say no. And especially even people that you live with, like, nope. Well, nope. The most important thing for me right now is to do this. And so then it moved from a reactionary, like, nope, 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 nope. And I started feeling really good about that because I was taking care of myself, and it balanced the relationship a lot more because then they had to take care of themselves and they weren't so reliant. Then I moved into this place of standing in my power and saying, I need this space and time for this. And, just so you're aware. And then, then the boundaries you can set from there. But like making like that self-awareness, like I don't have to make you stop right now. I can say, hey, like this is coming up. I need this time to do this thing. And I would like you to respect me around this. Or I really want to know if you're willing to support me in this area. So as I paid attention to my needs, I
Mhm.
became more aware of my needs, and then I was a better partner because then it wasn't just me lashing out all the time. So it's really interesting how when you pay attention to Chiron, when you heal those wounds, you come up with some really cool ideas about how people can work with those wounds. And it really does change your interactions with those around you. And, even with your body, like I don't push my body as much either because I respect my body. So it's like, okay, time to rest. And I'm able to communicate that better to my provider. So, like, Chiron is like this life-changing thing when we start paying attention and stop like reacting. Then we're more in the flow and we're more aware as stuff comes up. So we don't have to do those hard stops of, okay, my body completely gave out and now I'm going to have to do whatever. It's like, nope, I feel it coming. So let me stop now. Let me give myself more space. So that's my kind of experience with Chiron. And it's been very recent how I've been working with this, and it's been really amazing. So, how about
Yeah.
you? How was your experience with Chiron?
Yeah, interesting, right? Because we're around the same age. My Chiron is also in Taurus, but it's actually in my fifth house. So mine has kind of played out a bit differently. My two main areas with Chiron that I had issues with, are those the two? Well, three probably. So maybe, I mean, right, it's multi-layered. So we'll just see what I end up sharing. The first one was in, and I still struggle, right? These are things that like I've healed, but right, like it's different layers of it. So accepting my body has definitely been a big one for me. And just, right, Taurus is all about comfort. So using food, using things to like make myself comfortable, instead of like knowing when it's okay to kind of push myself versus like what you were saying, when it's time to pull back and to rest versus like when it's safe to move forward. Just safety. Yeah, there's so many facets of it. Safety was like a huge thing for me, like feeling safe in my body. And actually, when I sat with ayahuasca, Chiron was really being activated for me. And that was something the universe brought forward for me, like to go back and heal that wound at its beginning. So it was around my body and feeling safe. It's also been around, like I was one of six kids. And right, my parents did the best that they could, but right, there's six kids. There was, like that feeling of there's not enough to go around. So there it was always like I didn't really even know what my needs were. They were just something that I shut off and I just ignored for the longest time. So really getting in tune with like what are my needs? What's my energy versus other people's? Um, and then right being able to articulate that. Taurus is about the throat, and using our voice and expressing our needs, right? We can't, I've worked with, and I'm not laughing at these people at all. I'm laughing just at humanity in general because I think I always say that human beings are so funny. Like, when and I've done this too, like when we assume that other people should know what we need. Like I've actually had, oh, well, they should know what I need. I'm like, well, they're not a mind reader, and like I wouldn't want somebody just randomly thinking they assumed what I needed, right? Like we have to verbalize that to people. So I'm laughing at myself when I say that because, right, I definitely used to do that. So acknowledging, like articulating what my needs are. There's also been, because it's in the house of creativity and sexuality, definite like a lot of wounding, and just because of my other aspects. I did not feel safe around men sexually, but it was more than sexually. It was just like even physically being near them felt scary to me. Like I had this really, and I think this is like the past life aspect of Chiron for me, which Jessica and I were chatting about. Like it's current life, but it's also past life. Um, Physically in my body, I did not feel safe being around men. So that was also something I got to really heal because I have Mars and Venus conjunct my Chiron. Let's see what else. There's another. Yeah, the scarcity and like feeling like my needs were met. That was a huge part of the healing that I've had over the last couple of years. And then just self-worth too, right? Because Taurus is about the things that we value. It's about our self-worth. Um, I didn't, right at my core, I knew this consciously that I deserved, things that I wanted or needed. But in my subconscious, in my little child reptilian brain, I didn't think that I was worthy to have the things that I needed. So that's also something I've really gotten to heal and to look at, and why I put up with, um, why I put up with shit in relationships, why I dated people that weren't emotionally available, why I was attracted to people that didn't care about my needs, that didn't care about, my experience. So it's been quite a journey. And I'm, like Jessica was saying, it's that spiral and it's like we have the layers of it. So I feel like sitting with ayahuasca, like in that one ceremony in particular, like so much of that wound came up and I got to heal so much of it. But I see, right, it continues to be triggered in little cases. Like there's still men that I get near them and I'm like, oh, I don't feel safe with it, around them. So I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, I have to honor that, whether it's me being triggered or whether it's whatever it is, right? It doesn't even matter if there's a reason that I feel unsafe with them. I just have to trust, like, I don't feel safe. I'm going to put that boundary and that distance in. That was something, that I gave myself permission with. Um, because it can be hard sometimes, right? It's like, well, I want to be kind to everybody and I want to, be inclusive and all the things, but also if you don't feel safe with somebody, like, getting to honor that. Let me see if there's anything else I want to share. Right. So that covers a lot of areas. Oh, and the creativity. So um I had a lot of wounding around creativity. Like I would get really freaked out by like choosing a color for something or even like allowing myself to be in that state of like things don't have to be exactly right. And then I've begun ballroom dancing a few years ago, and that's helped me a lot, right? So combining that, like the aspect of having men near me, being in that creative space of movement, right? With Taurus in the body and like sexuality, right? Dance can be very sensual and expressive. So that has really helped me in so many ways that I didn't understand why the universe kept telling me. That's the other thing, right? If you are getting these signs, if you're getting these nudges to do something, like people keep telling you over and over again. Like I had so many people tell me about going to try ballroom dancing, and I love dancing. So I mean, it wasn't that much of a push, but sometimes it can be hard, right? It was definitely out of my comfort zone. Um, there's probably something there for you, right? Like the universe is directing you towards this thing. Yes, to have fun, to have joy. I think that's important, in life, but also the amount of healing and the amount of growth that I've had like in so many areas of my life and same with ayahuasca. I did not want to sit with ayahuasca at all. Like I did not want to. I was so like, no, we're not doing this. So yeah, just trusting that the universe loves you. And even when it feels uncomfortable and even when you're going there with the wounds, there's a reason behind it. It's that loving universe that wants us to heal, that wants us to excuse me, that wants us to, yeah, to be whole and happy. Sorry, y'all. I don't know if I've made this disclaimer yet, but when there's a lot of energy moving, burping and yawning, like I'm shocked I think that's the first one I've had on with us chatting so far. So I've done good.
So you bring up a lot of really good points with this idea of just being curious and tapping into our intuition, right? Like that's what I think is one of the most important things that Chiron takes away from us and brings back to us. This wounding takes away our trust in our own self. And when we can tap into that trust in our own self, we can really start paying attention. So being curious about things instead of being annoyed, like shifting, whenever all of these things are an energy, curiosity, anger, annoyance, frustration. And if we can shift the energy into something else, not stop it, but shift it into curiosity and say, okay, well, what is coming up? And kind of backtrack, like, okay, this happened. What happened that created this situation? Like sitting with ourselves and becoming more self-aware, we can really get curious and start understanding, because that's a lot of this Chiron wounding, is that we're not aware of what's going on or why this is happening. We just know that, and it's so vulnerable. And to be able to like sit with our vulnerability and go in with our vulnerability is super scary. Like most of the time we've been trying to push it away It doesn't feel like a place of power. It feels like a place of injury. And when we decide to stop and go in to it and sit with it, it is the place of our greatest power. And we become aware of what's moving things around. So, like you mentioned, we may not understand either. So it could be coming from this lifetime, probably from our childhood, from past lives. And then I'm even going to push the envelope because I love the galactic, but a past life doesn't mean that it has to be on this world. It can be in another world. So I say all that because then it's just like, well, then how do I even understand? You don't have to go with the emotion of it to understand it. I believe that our higher self, our spirit, our soul chose our astrology and said, I want to be born here. I want to be born in this place with these people at this time. So all of these alignments. And if that is true, then we chose this wounding. So it may be something that we wanted to become stronger in. Like I'd like to up level and superpower this. So we're going to make this the built-in wounding that we came in with. We came in with this, we chose this, and then we were born. And like I said, it may have come from a past life on Earth, a past life in the galaxy. It may have come from wounding from wherever. And we're saying part of this life, because this life has many purposes, is for my soul to heal this wounding and make it a superpower. So how do we superpower our life by healing this wound? Because when we are able to take it in and heal it, then we can use that to help the greater world. I mean, Chiron was a centaur, that was a healer, that was a teacher, that was a mentor. And working through his own wounding, he was able to really help other beings. That's kind of the ultimate arc of this myth. We are working through all of these myths that are part of this world to go through that hero's journey, to heal and learn, and to bring this knowledge and awareness that we're gaining in this 3D reality to our higher self, to our soul, to source. Because ultimately, source and our higher self and our soul wanted to experience this. So what is it like to have wounding in Taurus in the 6th house? Well, that's part of my soul journey, is to figure that out and see what comes of it. And that's where it's all about experiencing it. So we're not doing anything wrong. Whatever I learn is great. Whatever I don't learn is fine, because it is the experience of what it is to be in the body that is going and moving through this, moving through these activations of Chiron and Mercury and North Node in Aries. Like, what does that feel like to be on the earth at this time experiencing this? That is the ultimate purpose for us. So whatever we do, whatever we learn, we're doing it. Every day we're alive, we are doing exactly what our soul wanted us to do, which is have this experience with this constellation of, settings that have been put into place.
Yeah, and I mean, I believe that it's something that we learn, we overcome, and then we help other people with. And again, we've talked about this before. It's not something that you have to have completely healed in your life, right? Like the things that I'm helping people with are things that, okay, maybe I'm at level 6 and that person's at level 4. It's like, we're always progressing and learning. And that's why as healers, we're going to continue to evolve in that, right? We're going to continue to evolve in the people that we're helping and the things that we're helping them with, because the more that we heal, we're pulling that in and we're attracting that with the clients that we're helping. So yeah, it's fascinating, right? Like when you have clients sit down in front of you, you're like, holy shit, like this is so much of what I've struggled with.
Oh. Well, and
Yeah.
that's the energetic resonance, right? So I like the idea of being a guide and a coach. Like I engage in this kind of participatory healing. So like we're going to work together and look at what's going on and take it apart, and hopefully, you know, and most of the time they gain something from that interaction. So we have this resonance field around us and they have a resonance field around them. So they are attracted to us to help in these certain ways, just like I am attracted to certain healers and coaches and guides to help me in their own way. So, you're really good at the business stuff and you've helped me with that. And I'm really good at the galactic stuff and I've helped you with that. So it's like, it's okay to not be the expert at everything. Like,
Mhm.
I follow my passions and I'm really excited about certain things. And so I chase after those things. And then I want to get information from people that are super excited about their thing. Cause like I don't want to know a whole lot about business stuff. I just want to know what I need to know to help myself move forward because I'm going to spend the rest of my time doing the galactic and the astrology. And same with you. It's like we take what we need to help us move forward. And then we really focus on what we're passionate about. And those resonances bring people into our energy and we go into their energy. And we're all helping each other. So Robin's constellation of Chiron is going to help a certain group of people. And same thing with mine, and same thing with you. Like, there are people that you can help as you walk along your own path. They will be drawn to you because you have started paying attention. And that's really about the Chiron. Like, the Chiron is always drawing people, whether it's drawing people to help you move through that healing or drawing people to learn from your healing. You are always attracting people because of this wounding. And we will always be have healed some so we can help people, and we will always be attracting opportunities to do more healing. So it's just this ebb and flow, this process that we can open up to. And it's kind of the dance with the universe that I really feel like when things are hard and I'm really kind of leaning into it, like my higher self is up there and like, get it, girl, you got this. Ask me for whatever help you need, but I see you and you are doing amazing because you are showing up every day in this life. Like, and so it's just like, oh, like I can feel that resonance. And like, okay, like it wasn't the perfect day, but I still woke up and I did it. And my higher self is like, amen, sister, you got this.
Yeah. It's I think about that sometimes that if we looked at ourselves from the perspective of how our guides or the universe looked at us, like we would be cheering ourselves on, rather than like, oh, you're not doing enough, or this, you still have this to overcome, or whatever it is. Like we would be continually cheering ourselves on and like so excited for the experience that we're having, because that's the other thing, right? We are spirit having an experience. So there's no right or wrong. Like you could go your entire lifetime and not heal any of it, and that would be okay, because you're still healing it, like through experiencing it, and still you're still healing it. So cut yourself some slack. I'm talking to myself too, right? Let's cut ourselves some slack. Um, yeah, I think the other thing that's beautiful to remember, again, like this is my belief, and I would imagine, right? Because I feel like Jessica and I are both in this vibration that if you're listening to us, that you would probably agree with us. Life should be fun and joyful. It shouldn't be all, oh my God, I have to do some shadow work now. And I need to, yes, we're going to be doing that regardless, but really reminding yourself that it's important to encourage yourself and to love yourself through these things, and to have that, that viewpoint of, yeah, like I'm doing great. I woke up today. Maybe I didn't respond to that 100%, but maybe it was a little bit better than it was 6 months ago. And having those moments where you're identifying that and remembering that can be really powerful as well.
Well, and really being able to just play with it. How, like, I love your example where it was like, I have this wounding, and so I'm going to do ballroom dancing. Like, make healing fun. And every time you show up, and then we add that intentionality. So then every time we show up, it's like, okay, I am dancing to heal my Chiron. I am dancing to heal this wound. Having that intentionality behind your creativity is like, bam, wham, bam. Like, it's a double hit towards
Mhm.
moving us in that direction. And when you kind of merge those intention and creativity together and throw in some love, like it's going to knock it out of the park and you're going to enjoy doing it. So it's like, okay, how can I have fun and be creative and make play so that I love doing shadow work? Like, and that's
Mhm.
where, becoming more aware of where this sits in your chart and what that looks like. And then saying, okay, how can I make this a game? Because that's what life is. Life is a game. Like our higher self is playing this game. And okay, well, didn't win on that one, but maybe we'll win next round. Like it's just, moving through this, moving through life with humor really helps shift everything and holding it lighter. And that's what we have to do around these wounding patterns is opening up to it and allowing and embracing and surrendering around these woundings. And sometimes we get taken down this way. It's like, okay, well, at least I can see where I go when this happens. Like, even if we're being drug about by it, being aware and like, okay, I've got the video now of what this looks like. So let me work with that. There's nothing wrong with that because like you said, Robin, sometimes we do it right, sometimes we don't do it right. All of it is an experience, and we have to be kind and compassionate to ourselves while we're experiencing it so that we can heal it. Because if we don't truly understand it, we're not going to be able to heal it. So it's just
Yeah.
this beautiful process of allowing, embracing, and having gentleness.
Hmm. It's interesting, like even with, right, because the fifth house can be a lot about play and, it's like a very childlike energy. That was something that I struggled with for a while. The fact that, like, for my own sanity, I had to bring lightness and humor into healing and also working with clients. And for a while, I was like, because right, I want to have integrity. I want to be, obviously like respectful of people's journeys that they're going on. So I think for a little bit, I was just like, oh, is this okay that, that I'm doing this? And spirit was like, yes, like it's okay. Like we need to bring, it doesn't need to be so heavy and so dark because a lot of it is, right? There is so much, it's heavy, our core wounds, right? Like this isn't easy shit that we're talking about. Like these are things that go into like the very fabric of who we are and like how we perceive the world. So yes, just what Jessica was saying, like bringing that lightness into it is so important. And just reminding yourself, right? If my higher self chose this, that means that I can overcome it. I don't think our souls are setting us up for failure. Like I have to remind myself of that sometimes. I'm like, my soul chose this. That means that I can heal it. That means that I can push myself with love and with gentleness and compassion and put myself into situations, right, that are safe, that allow me to continue to heal this wound and allow me to continue to grow and expand and share, right? The universe wants us to share our light and to be more of who we are. So it's a really beautiful opportunity to do that.
Well, and also we're not doing it alone. That's what we have to remember. Like our higher self is there, our guides, our angels. All we have to do is ask for help. They want to be here, but also like sovereignty. So unless we say, I need help, help me, they're going to let us do whatever. And so asking for that help and like we said before, ask for help, be grateful and loving when you get it, reflect back like, thank you, universe, for helping me. Thank you, guides, for helping me. And just opening up. And then those stretch opportunities. That's where I found myself kind of leaning into the wound, like, oh, I feel
Mm.
myself getting a little spicy right now. I'm going to lean into that. Like, do I have the capacity right now? Like, am I rested enough, and have I eaten, that hungry, angry, lonely, tired, like have I addressed my needs sufficiently that I can lean into this a little bit and see like where are we at, like I can lean into it, and then it's like the capacity to expand and to see, and like the closer we get to that trigger and being aware of it, it's like okay. And that's where like I have been my biggest cheerleader because I'm like, okay, universe, help me because I can feel it coming. Like, help me expand into this. And then I get so excited when I'm able to. Like, yes, like, look at that. Look what we were able to do. And just be
Yeah.
thankful for myself. And then saying, okay, now here's the line. So let me go. Like, okay, I've had enough. Like, okay, I'm going to need to take a 5-minute break from my meeting or whatever it is. Like, I've reached the line or I'm close. So let me provide that space that I need for myself. And that's such a beautiful way to role model meeting our own needs. Cause I feel like that's one of the things that we really lack in this society is, the grind, like you got to work, you got to do this, you got to be productive. And it's so much on not listening and paying attention to ourselves that it's hard to heal that wound unless we kind of turn that focus in and work on ourselves. So being able to role model and say, I do feel safe and worthy to ask for this break or to have my needs met. And then, just feeling comfortable in that worthiness of it's okay to take up space, to be heard, and to feel balanced.
Yeah. The other thing that's coming to mind is, and this has been such a part of my journey, is like, even when I am triggered, and I can't catch it or I'm not able to like, to move through it in the most conscious way, still loving myself, right? Like that part of you needs more love, not less. So it doesn't mean that you don't go back maybe later on and apologize. It doesn't mean that you can't have integrity. It doesn't mean, right, that you can't take actions after that to kind of rectify it. But loving yourself, right? Just reminding yourself that I did the best that I could. How can I improve moving forward? Because I used to like beat myself up, like, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done it. And now I'm just, and again, bringing that laughter to it, like, oh, okay, there's my wound again, getting triggered by something that kind of seems silly. Um, and then just right, like if I need to go back and apologize to somebody, if I need to go back and have a conversation, it's okay to love yourself through that. It's okay to be kind to yourself, to give yourself that space, because when you're triggered like that, you're going back to childhood, really. Like you're acting from that space of wounding. You're going back to that triggered space. So your nervous system is freaking out. You don't feel safe, right? Like being in that trauma space it doesn't feel good. So if you, right, like if you're not being your best self, just remembering to give yourself that love and just, okay, let me just love myself for a minute, just talking yourself through it. Like, okay, you did great. Deal with the stuff after that. Make sure you feel safe again, make sure that you're loving yourself, and then you can deal with things later on rather than like coming at it from that space.
Yeah, take care of yourself first and bring your nervous system into a beautiful place and then heal relationships next. And that's really what we're doing. You mentioned that rewiring. Like that's what this is whatever that first initial thing, probably from our childhood, dysregulated our nervous system. And that's what really is happening when we're triggered is our nervous system gets dysregulated and then we're not functioning out of normal everyday Jessica or Robin. We're functioning out of fight, flight, fawn, freeze. Like all of these things can happen. So we're not in the right state of mind. And when we stop, when we're in this wild frenzy in our mind and we love ourselves, what we're actually doing is we're healing. So we're creating, cognitive flexibility and neural flexibility. And the sooner we can do it, we're undoing those patterns. So our brain is constantly rewiring itself. So you're either creating new or you're living in old ruts. So it may take us a while to get in there, but whenever we realize that we're triggered and we send ourselves loves, we say, okay, it stops here. I'm not following this pathway anymore. And what I'm going to do is create a new one where whenever this incident happens, I'm going to choose love. So it becomes easier every single time to where at some point that entire pathway of trauma is eaten away. It no longer exists. And that's why
Yeah.
every single time that we can catch ourselves and be aware of when we're in this agitated state and we can provide that love, every single time it is changing our mind, it is changing our brain. And, that is how we function. Like that's how we literally can shift our entire reality because our brain and our neurons and how they fire and what hormones they're producing completely shifts. So it's a beautiful, like there's a physical effect to how we change our thinking.
Yeah.
So
Um,
I was just going to say, we've touched on the houses some, and I know that we want to talk about that next. So is there anything else that you want to share about Chiron as we kind of close up?
no, I think we hit all the well, actually let me share one more thing. So a teacher, and I can't remember where who she got this from, so I'm not gonna say the name, but there's somebody out there who has this theory um, that the degree of your Chiron is the age of the wound.
Oh,
So,
wow.
right, let's say it's 13 degrees of Taurus. Um, and this, like some people can kind of identify this a little bit easier than others. So I've worked with clients where when I ask them, like they know exactly what I'm talking about. There's other times where it's not something as obvious, but it will, right? Like it'll make itself known. You'll have more understanding around it, or you won't, right? Like sometimes it's just, information that we can use, but um it, it may also not seem like it's a big deal. Sometimes when we look at our Chiron wound, because it goes so far back, because it has implications in galactic and past life and childhood, you may not be able to identify like, oh, it's this one thing, so just give yourself grace around that. I think I struggled where I was like, oh, I need to know what it is, but ultimately you're healing it. And if you're meant to know what it is, if you're meant to have that understanding, that will also come. I don't know if other people struggle with that as much as I do sometimes. Like, I need to know what it is, but it's like, it'll it'll come if it's meant to, and if it doesn't, just trust that you'll understand what you need to about it.
Yeah, it definitely comes in layers, and it takes big moments sometimes, for me at least, to really like put the pieces together. Like it's been in the last year that I've really gained a deep understanding around my wounding, and I'm, turning 41. So allow it to unfold as it does, and just pay attention to those trigger spots. And, there's always work we can do around healing, or play we can do around healing. So just looking towards more self-awareness and healing it as it unfolds really will help you. Just trusting intuitively that if you're wanting to be more self-aware, you're working towards healing that wounding.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us for our first podcast on Chiron. And we're going to get ready to go into our next podcast. So make sure that you keep an eye out. These will be out a week after each other. So we will be posting our next podcast on Chiron in the houses. Robin and I both talked about what it looks like in our houses, but we're going to go through each of the houses and signs to give you a more insight around what that might look for you. So before the next podcast, if you don't already know, look for where Chiron falls in your chart, what house, what sign, and I'm going to even check on my degrees to see what age and what information. So even if you don't resonate with all of this stuff, like I notice when I read over or listen, like one or two things will pop out and I'm like, okay, that's where I'm going next. So feel free to listen to this over and over again at different points to gain little snippets of information that really pop out for you around your healing.
Yeah. And like and subscribe and share with all your friends and tell everybody, how awesome we are.
And give us some comments too. Let us know how this is working out for you, and also notifications. Somebody said, how do I not know what's going on? Click the notification button and you'll be aware every time a new episode comes out.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Lots of love.
Bye.
I can see the stars align, dance around the moon every night. And now my eyes are open wide, and the sky has never looked so bright. Now I don't need to see the road to believe